All right, welcome back, everybody, to Apostate Weekly. I'm your host, James.
And I'm Ryan.
And today we're talking about Danny Masterson, who is a Scientologist, and the sentence that was laid down upon him last week at a court in California for his role in raping women. And with us today, we have Chris Shelton, who is an author, consultant, podcaster, videographer, and former cult member of the Church of Scientology himself, here to discuss with us about the case and impact that it can have not only on Scientology, but other cults as well. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Sorry, just posting another link to the show right now. Glad to be all done with that. And, thank you very much for having me. I just wanted to get some links posted out for this thing.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into that intro and we'll hit the show. All right.
I love that intro. That was hilarious.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we always Ryan always says how I don't know if you know about like the leadership of the Jehovah's Witnesses, how they have the governing body. And one of the governing body's members' name is David Splain, and she's always like, "Oh, it's the bones of David Splain playing there."
It just sounds like someone's just like a xylophone banging on his
right.
bones.
That's right. Is it a thing that people get David splained?
Yeah, right.
I feel like it. I feel like he David splains to us all the time, which is basically just mansplaining religion. So
that's right. That's right.
And he is like that because he was the one that he's like, do the math on different things, and different way he explains things. It's just always so odd and weird. So
he really does
really is
things
fitting
in his
for
own
him.
way. Yes.
Yeah.
Art imitates life.
Yep.
Which I'm sure you have a lot of that in Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard was quite the character. So
quite. Yes, quite the misogynist. And David Miscavige is a close second. They're not good people.
No, which is pretty apparent. And it seems to be apparent, just like in our cult with the Jehovah's Witnesses, that it seems to be a place where people come to be groomed, and people come to either, be that sheep, or they're going to be that leader. There's a two places where you can fit. Either you're in the elite or you're not. And it seems like people like Danny Masterson, David Splain, seem to be those elite who can get away with things that others may not. Well, at least he did for 20 years, but
yeah, that is correct. He's no longer getting away with anything in prison. But for a very long time, Danny Masterson was helped by the Church of Scientology in covering up for and stalking and harassing his victims. They did not just get well, it's a long story. I don't know where you want to start on it, but there's a lot to know about the whole Masterson history of this, and a lot of people are a little confused right now because of just as a flyby headline, 20 years, what? 30 years, what? Life? Like, how is this possible? And people get confused about it, but the story actually makes complete sense, and it involves Scientology in ways that are horrifying.
So why don't we... I was going to say, why don't we
James.
talk about some of those ways that Scientology is involved? Because, I know I listen to a lot of shows about Scientology, and they have all these different policies, especially the fair gaming policy is a huge one that stands out to me because of the tactics they use that I've seen them do with Mike Rinder and Leah Remini, and just like, how did they do those kinds of things in Danny Masterson's case?
Well, okay. So Danny Masterson is a second-generation Scientologist. He grew up in a Scientology family, and the Masterson clan is, as we refer to them, is a very large family with extended connections going all the way out to everybody on the 70s show. You know, Laura Prepon used to be a Scientologist. She's no longer. And other cast members there, and even Ashton and Mila, you know, Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, who have been on the hot seat the last few days because of their support of Masterson. So, so there's a lot of influence and money there.
Mm-hmm.
Not just about Danny Masterson when it comes to his membership in the Church of Scientology. It has to do with public image. It has to do with their delusional self-image.
Perception.
Right? Their idea that they are the most ethical people on the planet, and anybody who gets in their way is simply trying to stop the forward progress of mankind. Having been there for decades, it's complete opposite world in there. And so they feel very righteous, very justified in doing the things that they do to protect Scientology and protect Scientologists, because everything is about Scientology's public image, and it's about its good works around the world. Now, all of us know when you're out in the real world that that's not Scientology's image at all, but they think it is, and it's really nuts. And on top of that, you have a very authoritarian control framework built into this organization. I won't say church. I could, you know, it is a church. It's recognized as such, but it's really more of a mafia criminal organization, and it runs itself more like a business. So
the familiarities here. Wow.
Oh yeah,
I know. The parallels are just
exactly.
They're not coincidental. It's on purpose.
That is, that's right. So Masterson, and this is how I kind of like to draw this analogy and why I'm sort of laying this out this way, is because if you think about Masterson as just another Scientologist who has weird beliefs in Xenu or something, then you're really going to have a wrong picture of who this guy is and how the church thinks about him. He's a Scientology VIP celebrity. And that puts him into a rarefied air of Scientologists. That puts him up into the 1% of Scientologists. And that is analogous, you could say, to the mafia's idea of a made man.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's a made man, and he can't do any wrong because he's an earner. He's a producer. He's somebody who works for Scientology at Christmas and promotes Scientology and tells people to read Scientology books. And he's therefore a Scientologist in good standing. And he's raking in the money and he's raking in the influence. And people like Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis have even come and attended Scientology events because of that influence. So that's kind of more of how to think about him, is he's a made man in that world. All the celebrities are in that world.
Right.
So when some inconvenient woman, girlfriend, series of women 20, 25 years ago start coming forward and telling the church, and they're Scientologists too, and they come forward to the church as ethics authorities and chaplains and people who are supposed to be in charge of internal church discipline. And they say, Danny Masterson attacked me. Danny Masterson raped me. Danny Masterson has sexually assaulted me. And Danny Masterson drugged me in order to do that to me, even his own girlfriend. The church says, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. We don't use that word here, rape. We don't talk about things that way. It's impossible for him to have raped you because you're his girlfriend. You're his girlfriend. That means he's the earner. You're the lackey. You're the one who's riding on his coattails. You don't get to say he's abusing you or mistreating you. This is the term that they use in Scientology. He is the upstat. And this is a term for statistic. He's producing, he's earning. In Scientology, the terminology is he's an upstat. His statistics are uptrending. He's producing for the church more and more and more. Who are you, and why should we be listening to you, Mr. Danny Masterson's girlfriend?
So can I ask you something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to set the stage for the kind of the attitude of how this thing started.
Oh yeah, no,
Right.
absolutely.
That's how they set their model up.
That's
so
right.
in the typical like Christian models of households and things, you have what's called headship. I don't know how familiar you are with that or not, where like the man is the breadwinner. And so like from the culture we came from, you know, the wife is supposed to give a husband her due, what they call it, you know, basically have sex with him whenever, you know, he wants her to. It doesn't matter whether she wants to or not. And it sounds very familiar to what's going on here. Is there some kind of hierarchical like family structure, or is it just based off of them paying their dues and things like that in Scientology?
It's really quite mercenary. It's really all about the money. At the end of the day, Scientology is a money-making scam that's disguised as a religion. I'm glad we got that out of the way early, because I usually forget to lead with that. And yet it's a very important statement, because it's actually the core truth of Scientology. There's actually something even deeper than that, having to do with occult stuff, but we don't need to go there today. Because that's L. Ron Hubbard's stuff. As far as Masterson goes and all that, it's all about religion, and it's all about, you know, saving the world and making yourself a better person and all of that. That was Masterson's experience with Scientology. He never even got to the level of the Xenu stuff, by the way. Like, he never went that high in all the years he was involved in it. But he was still an active member, and he was still considered a celebrity VIP. So your status is not even based on how high you go or what secrets you know. It's how much money you're giving or potentially able to give or bring in influence and power to Scientology, i.e. Ashton Kutcher, etc., who's a far more influential person and rich person than, say, a Danny Masterson. So that's kind of how they gauge who's important in that world, and therefore who is to be protected. And that's what Danny Masterson received. He received the sort of cloak of protection from Scientology's organizational structure. And when that goes into play to protect you, that means that your accusers are not just ignored or given short shrift. That means, especially because these women were the accusers, the three women whose charges were brought in the case, they were all ex-Scientologists. And so the church held even more undue influence over them because of their belief in the Scientology system.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And that means that means they had to toe the line, and yes sir, no sir, how high sir, when it came to the church ordering them as to what to do. And one of the church's key policies at the center of all of this that really prevented these women from taking their case to the police and really pushing it through is that in Scientology, it is a high crime, sort of disconnection, shunning offense to go to the police about another Scientologist. Absolutely, absolutely forbidden.
Sounds familiar.
Exactly. This is all playbook.
Yeah, they don't want the outside world to see what's going on behind their doors.
Correct.
Right.
And they want to be able to control whatever information flows out about them to everybody else, and they just don't see how that information, when it does get out, they don't understand why it gets out either.
Because there's people on the inside who don't really like them,
and there's people on the outside who don't like them either. So
yeah, well, it goes both ways.
It's a whole thing. I mean, because it's Cult 101, right? This is Cult Leader Playbook stuff, and this is all just how these things operate, and this is why we see all the parallels between the groups. I mean, at the end of the day, there are only so many ways to control people. It's not an infinite list. You know, you can categorize the ways in about 9, 12 different overall methods, and once you've figured those out, it's just variations on the same theme. Well, yeah. And information control is absolutely one of those. Emotion control is another one. gaslighting, etc. Right? And in the case of Scientology, the gaslighting started with these women right away. We don't use that word here. Don't call it rape. That's not what it was. You don't get to say that, right? That kind of thing. Immediately controlling the language and therefore controlling how we are going to talk about and how we are going to think about this. And how we're going to frame this is you deserved it. You did something to pull it in, is what they say, right? You somehow karmically induced this to occur.
Yeah.
And you got to look at that. You got to look at what you did, not what this person did to you. This kind of thing. It's all this reverse, like, let's make it.
It sounds like Darvo is just kind of manufactured into their whole foundation, like their whole program.
That's right.
Turn it back on you. The victim, you've somehow caused this. That really must be so hard to deal with, because just as society, women usually, or the person who's been harmed, regardless of who it is, it's usually their fault. Well, what were you wearing? Whatnot. And then here you can't even, in Scientology, you can't even say the word. You can't even speak the reality of what it was. That's something that's not allowed. That has to be really hard to swallow as somebody who has been harmed.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's hell for the victims. Yeah. And then it actually gets worse, because as bad as all of this is, not being believed, being given short shrift, being told to, fuck off, whatever, that these women were basically treated as. In fact, one of them was even ordered to accept a monetary settlement to shut up and sign an NDA. And if she didn't, it was going to be declare time. It was going to be time for her to get kicked out of the church. And one of the things that that is very extreme in Scientology is its version of shunning. They call it disconnection, and it is complete. It is absolute. There is no exceptions. There are no coming back from it. Once you are what they call labeled or declared a suppressive person, an SP, then you are persona non grata forever to every single Scientologist, including family members, business partners, relations, your kids, anybody. If they want to continue being a Scientologist, you are no longer in their life in any way. And you can't talk to them. You can't talk about them. Like, just nothing. You just don't. They just don't exist anymore. And there is a sort of road back from that is a years-long process. I've compared, contrasted it with other groups like the JWs, and the road back in Scientology is pretty severe. It involves paying a lot of money and doing a lot of jumping through a lot of loyalty hoops and stuff like that.
Everything's money with them, it seems.
Very much so. And so the reason I'm saying that is because this is the threat that these women faced if they didn't cooperate with the church as well. Then we're going to kick you out and declare you suppressive. And the reason that this would have been so devastating is that it wasn't just Scientology, it wasn't just Danny Masterson that these women were connected with. Their entire world contains Scientologists. This is what cults do, is they pair off and cut off your other relationships and your other friendships, and they heavily encourage you to only associate with, and certainly only have romantic involvements with, other members of the group. So you quickly find yourself kind of drawn into this community world where you're suddenly know all the people you know, even your professional connections, are Scientologists. And as somebody who was aspiring to be an actress or a model, which a couple of these women were, if Masterson cut them off, if Scientology cut them off, everybody they knew would have cut them off. In some cases, their own family would have had a problem with them. And this is a big deal. This is not a small threat. This is a life-changing catastrophe. So when faced with the, Lady and the Tiger, right? The sort of devil in the deep blue sea. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do here? There's no. And that's where every one of these women were placed. And in the case of this one woman, it was like, okay, well, we're going to declare you, or you're going to take this NDA and you're going to take this money and you're going to shut the hell up. And so it was really no choice at all for her. And this is what slowed down and stopped the investigations into these incidents all those years ago. This is back in the early 2000s.
Now, is there any kind of like, so they were forced to sign this NDA, right?
One of them was, yeah.
One of them was. Okay, so if they...
Even one of the children had to sign an NDA of Jane Doe 1, isn't that correct? A child even had to sign it?
That would be news to me if that's it, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Wow,
I know for sure one of the Jane Does had to. There's the whole story is laid out there. A child connected with that, I'm not sure of.
Okay. So my question is, though, is there any recourse for the victim that signed this NDA when they finally do come out publicly and say, you know, they're willing to take that risk to be declared and everything like that? Is there legal recourse since they signed that NDA on them to come back onto them because, well, you were supposed to not say anything because you signed this legal paperwork?
I don't think that you can actually hold somebody to an NDA to keep quiet about criminal acts. And that is what this was about. The center of this whole thing were rapes. And that's criminal activity in anybody's playbook, right? And this was all still very much during the time where it was still very much under the statute of limitations. I mean, this was a very prosecutable offense. So I'm not a legal eagle. I'm not 100% sure what the ins and outs of that particular NDA she signed was, but I'm pretty sure that Scientology will not be pursuing, you know, compensatory damages against her now that, especially now that Masterson has been found guilty of these crimes. And these women are actively suing the Church of Scientology in civil court now for the further actions that were done even after this, because the story doesn't even end with the NDA. It goes on even further. So Scientology is not really in a position where any court of law is really going to take that NDA very seriously, as far as I can tell. It would absolutely boggle me if any judge seriously gave credence to such a case.
Well, that would be good, because that shouldn't have any credence whatsoever, especially with all the coercion behind the scenes going on and all the tactics that they're using against the people to try to keep them shut up and buried. That really shouldn't have an impact. But I figured I'd ask that anyways, because legal documents usually do hold some weight. But
absolutely,
considering the case and what it's about, this absolutely should not.
No, it was, I mean, we can really look at it and chalk it up to just one more form of, as you mentioned, coercion and intimidation that was laid against these women. Because the way that they testified to this, it was crystal clear that, you know, this woman was called in alone into a room, you know, this is your lawyer, and he's telling you, you need to sign this document. And if you don't sign this document, your life's over. I mean, that alone, it nullifies the contract. So, you know, so good luck trying to enforce that. And I don't think Scientology would even try. But as an intimidation tactic at the time, it worked.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
And that was the only point, was make it go away, shut these women down. And the horrible second chapter to all of this is, after they started learning about one another years after the fact and went to the police in 2017, and an investigation was started, Scientology then began a horrific campaign of personal intimidation, harassment, and stalking that continued for years and continues to this day, which is the entire basis of their civil lawsuit against the church and Danny Masterson for not only the rapes, which was the criminal offense against Danny, but now the civil suit against the church is, you guys have been conspiring to shut us up and shut us down, and you're going to pay for that now. And that's now
trying to circumvent the law.
And
the Scientology couldn't care less about the law. So, you know, that's
what's really disgusting about all this, you know, and the same goes for the Jehovah's Witnesses too. They claim about how they're trying to, you know, help everybody, and, you know, in your Scientology terms, clear the planet, I think it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Jehovah's Witnesses, their whole thing is to, basically preach the message to everybody, to save everybody. But then they take their money and put it into these people to harass others.
Yeah.
Like it's like Scientology, private eyes. Like this is what I've seen on Leah Remini's show, private eyes that, spend months upon months stalking and harassing people. How much of that money, if they would have not spent it, could they have actually used to help people and do good in the world rather than stalking and intimidating and terrorizing others for their own selfish purposes?
Yeah,
it's just sickening that they do that.
No, their valuation as an organization is somewhere between real estate assets and other things. We're estimating it's about $3 billion with a B, and that's money, right?
Yeah,
it's chump change compared to, say, the Mormon Church, but it is a significant amount of money in anybody's estimation. And their public outreach and public community charity actions amount to a hill of beans. They are all PR photo opportunities for them. If they're ever out doing disaster relief, or they're
we
ever
know all
out,
about that.
Of course you
all
do, right?
about it.
Yeah.
It's all just about perceptions. They've sent people to like the border in Ukraine to stand there with like JW signs, and they will only help other JWs.
Right.
Nothing for, and the people who are standing there, the Jehovah's Witnesses who are giving the aid, that's all from their pockets. That's their time. They're being extorted for their kindness, and the whole organization itself comes out smelling like a dozen roses because they're like, look what Jehovah has done. And the person who did the work gets no recognition, and they wouldn't want it. They wouldn't want the recognition, because that would be, you wouldn't be humble.
Right, because you're carefully indoctrinated into believing. Yes, I'm sure. With Scientologists, for their disaster relief efforts, they have all these yellow jackets, these volunteer ministers, and the individual Scientologists have to pay their way to fly to the disaster site, do all the logistical help that they do. The only thing Scientology is paying for is for the photo shoot crew to fly out there and take pictures of all of them, and then fly back and take credit for all their work. It's that blatant. It's that gross. And Scientologists just go along with it because they think that the church is engaged in some big master plan that is salvaging the planet. And so they think that their money is well spent and their time is well spent and all of that. And they're absolutely being taken advantage of.
Oh, it gets
it's all
even
performative.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to say it gets even worse with the Jehovah's Witnesses too. Like if you go to a disaster relief area, like say a hurricane, right? So they'll have the volunteer witnesses come in, help build these people's homes, witnesses' homes back, right? Only the witnesses, mind you, not anybody else in the community, with their volunteer money and time and all that. Then after they're done doing that, the organization will send somebody in behind them and say, okay, now you need to give us the check from the insurance company, and coerce them into giving them that check. So now the people, yes, they might have gotten their house back, but they have nothing else, no other money coming in to help get them beyond that in this kind of situation.
The things that they may have lost.
Other things they might have lost. And it's just like, they're still left up Schitt's Creek.
I had not been aware of that particular aspect of their scam. That is so gross.
Yeah.
That is so gross.
And it's frustrating because we know, just like Scientology, the charity work is not, there is no real charity. It's coming from their pockets. It's just it's just for the visuals. It's PR. It's all about PR. They even have a PR team now. I'm guessing just when it comes to celebrities, they are the PR. They're just walking PR for Scientology. I mean, Tom Cruise.
Well,
you say Tom Cruise, it's like synonymous with Scientology.
Correct. There's actually, Scientology is not a monolithic organization. It consists of a labyrinth of many, many organizations. And one of those organizations, a network of them, is called the Celebrity Center Network. And there are specific Scientology churches that cater only to celebrities. And all Scientology celebrities' activities and statements and PR and all of that is all coordinated through the president's office of the Celebrity Center International in Hollywood, California. And that group are the group who take control of celebrity flaps, like this whole Masterson thing. All of this was run out of the president's office, and they have a direct line to David Miscavige, the head of Scientology, who oversees any and all legal threats to Scientology. So given that we know that's how the structure works, there are ex-members who have been part of every level of this structure who have talked about this, then you know that David Miscavige personally knew about this whole Danny Masterson thing. And you would never be able to prove that with a paper trail or anything, unless you went in there with a few truckloads of stuff to take all the file cabinets worth of knowledge, out of Scientology, as was done in 1977.
Digitize, please.
Oh yeah. And of course, if they have any idea it's coming, it's Shred Party, right? And so,
oh god, yeah,
we've had many of those in Scientology. So,
as if we,
it's a whole operation, right? And
it really is.
And this celebrity thing actually is quite invasive, because they will install Scientologists in the celebrity's inner circle as their assistants and as their managers, or as the people who run their life. Even babysitters or nannies, things like that. They have all kinds of Scientologists installed around these celebrities, so that those people are reporting to the church what's up, what's going on in that celebrity's life, that kind of thing. So it's actually it's more invasive and crazy than you think. If you start thinking about this outfit as an intelligence and spy operation connected, and sort of like that hooked up with the mafia, you have a much, much more accurate rendition of what Scientology actually is. Yeah.
Now, how long were you in Scientology for again, Chris?
Well, I was raised in it. So I basically was involved since I was about 4 years old. I officially started doing services when I was 15 years old, when I was still in high school. And I started working for the church right out of high school when I was 17. And I did that for 25 more years. So, I got out when I was 42.
Okay. So. Yeah, I'm similar. Got out in my 40s, just waking up recently. So
I get it.
I got you all beat. I got out in my 30s. Ha ha. No.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you.
Right. Yeah. I love it. I love seeing people come out of these organizations.
We all wish we would have left when we were younger. I know that. So we look back and we're just like, why did it take me so long? But I mean, the indoctrination and the manipulation, that's what keeps you in, especially if you have family that's inside of it. And you know that by leaving this, you're going to lose all your family and friends. That alone keeps people in for many years for no reason other than that.
That's right. That's right. There's every reason people have to become part of a religious activity, and there's all the emotional needs, right? There's community, meaning, purpose, ethics, and morality, and all of it, right? It's all there for Scientology because they put on this show and this face of being a community interested, active, helpful group,
except for one thing. You mentioned it in what you were just said. Scientology has no ethics. they like to say they do, but they don't.
Well, that's exactly right. Yet they actually, and I'm not even kidding, L. Ron Hubbard literally wrote the words, we are the most ethical group on the planet. So that's not how they think of themselves, right? And that's the upside down world of it, right?
Oh yeah.
And similarly, the Jehovah's Witnesses do the same. They just think that their shit don't stink. No offense to any current Jehovah's Witnesses who might be catching this.
I hope they do.
I wish they would.
Yeah. Well, it's often I've found over the years a really, really interesting thing that you can help get people to wake up by educating them or entertaining them with information about a different cult than the one they're in.
Yes.
Because then they're not so defensive about it, and they're willing to look at that group over there and how crazy they are. Of course, my group isn't anything like that, but it's seed planting, right? Because bits of that, oh, wait a minute, we do kind of do that, you know, and that's why they really encourage the members of all these groups to not look at any cult stuff, right? Because
they know better.
And what's also really funny is, as a Jehovah's Witness, we could definitely point, Scientology, yeah, that's definitely a cult. Mormons, they're definitely a cult. But us, no, we're not a cult at all.
Exactly.
It's always it's always everybody else and not you.
That's right. That's right. And but it's always a good line or a good way to slowly plant those seeds.
Yes.
Is, did you see this Shiny Happy People documentary? You can't believe these people. Right? Or did you see Wild Wild West? Oh my God, these Osho guys, right? They're crazy. You show that to a Scientologist and it's just seed planting. And eventually it tends to grow into something.
Yeah. Leah Remini helped wake me up. I mean, it took a while, but I was watching her show. I was still in at the time, but I would watch her show and I'd say, there's similarities, but no, it's not. It's worse. It's definitely worse with what they do. Yeah, we don't do that. That's definitely worse. Right. And then, as the scales kind of fell off, like Paul, like, oh God, I had this great revelation. And it finally hit me like, oh no, they're using the same. It's different. They're using the same tactics, just employing them a little different. And it really does help. It is kind of like a domino effect. You make a really good point with that.
Yeah. Mm. And now we have that other show on Netflix, How to Become a Cult Leader.
Yeah, I did a whole review on that.
Oh, no, I did not see that. Oh boy.
Oh yeah, I did a whole thing on it. It was a great show.
I've only seen the first episode so far, but yeah, good show. Definitely check it out if you haven't.
Yeah. No, I'll give it a thumbs up. Because it's good general education. It's good. It's it's snarky. It's sarcastic. It doesn't necessarily treat the material in the way that some people feel it should be, with the seriousness that it really does deserve in a more harder look at it. But it's a flyby that gives you enough solid information and enough real information that you could actually walk away being aware of some of the red flags and actually being able to use it in your life.
So I'd like to switch gears a little bit here, if you don't mind. Let's talk a little bit about Ashton Kutcher and Mila.
Sure.
And, just the absolute shitstorm that they did, where they first came out in support of Danny by writing those letters, and then now they were forced to publicly come back and apologize. And just what a crazy fucked up thing that was in its entirety from start to finish. I mean, they wrote letters to the judge basically saying how great of a person Danny is and how much they helped him throughout their time knowing each other in the last 25 years and yada, yada, yada. And then on top of all that, they have a foundation that's supposed to help victims of these types of abuses. And they're supporting this abuser.
Yes, the hypocrisy is a little thick, isn't it?
Oh, just a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah. And it's particularly egregious because we're told that these were sent to the judge after the conviction had already happened. And so there wasn't a question about whether he was guilty or not. It was, he's going to get sentenced, and he's going to get sentenced for a good long time. And these letters were intended to be helpful to try to sway the judge that he's not completely evil. And so therefore, maybe you could give him, the 15 rather than the 30, and et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately for them, those letters became public, and they are public record. And I don't know that they ever thought or imagined that they were going to become public, but they were. That was Tony Ortega's reporting, and Megan Cundiff both worked very hard to get hold of those and get them out there. And so we owe the release of those to those two reporters. And Tony's been covering Scientology for years, and I do a show with him every week. So I'll throw a shout out to him on this one. Because he worked hard on that. There's a couple things about this, right? Is one, it's egregious, it's awful, it's how could they? It's Jesus, you know, what were they thinking? On the other hand, this is such a standard practice in law with almost every case where somebody's getting sentenced and people will write letters to the judge to, you know, as character references or whatever, that a lot of lawyers are looking at this going, what is the problem here, right? So there's a little bit of a two sides thing to it, which is interesting. I only bring it up because it's so interesting that that's the case. Now, that all being said, this was incredibly ill-advised, incredibly stupid.
God,
too,
yes,
right?
yes.
Because Danny Masterson's crimes were not minor. And and his crimes he Cosby'd these women. He didn't just assault them, he drugged them, and under drugs, with them having no idea what was going on, there's not even a pretense of consent. There's not even a pretense that this is a sexual activity. This is straight up assault. And so you kind of have to think for a moment, why would you want to speak up for somebody, even if you've known them for 30 years, after they did that?
Right.
And you have to think, well, they must believe that he didn't really do it and that these women were lying. They must think that. Or even worse, and this is pure conjecture on my part, of course, but did Kutcher really just not care?
Now,
right?
Ding, 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 ding.
Ashton and Mila are not Scientologists, correct?
They are not. They are not.
So,
as far as anyone knows, they are not. They have spoken. What they did is they have attended Scientology events. I saw photo evidence of that, but that doesn't mean that they are or were Scientologists. I can't say
that's fine, and I'll just kind of go with that they aren't for right now. And I know it's still conjecture, but so that being said, though, what kind of influence can Scientology Church have on Ashton and Mila to write those letters in support of Danny?
Oh, probably none. I mean, to be completely blunt and objective about this, it was the lawyers who asked them to do that. It was Danny who asked them to do that. The church wouldn't have had to have gotten involved, nor would it make sense to, because a lot of the people who wrote letters, it wasn't just Mila and Ashton. It was other crew from the 70s show. The people who played the parents, they both wrote letters. Bunch of friends of Danny Masterson wrote letters. Of course, his family members wrote letters. Ethan Suplee wrote a letter. He's another actor who's known Masterson for years, who is a Scientologist. So, it came from both camps in terms of Scientologists and non-Scientologists. Would the church have been interested in that happening? Sure. Would the church have advised people who were Scientologists to do that? Sure. But Ashton and Mila aren't Scientologists as far as we know, and so they were just doing it to help their friend, as I think how they saw it.
Okay.
Do you mind if I interject for a second?
Go ahead.
So I honestly think that they either didn't care or just did not realize that those statements would be public so soon, or maybe that the media would care so much about it. Maybe they thought like the stans, like those who are such super fans for the show or of Danny Masterson, would just be like, whatever, we don't care, we like him as an actor, which there's a lot of that as well.
Yes.
But the way that they continuously harped on the drugs in the letter, he kept us away from drugs. He was such an outstanding character, and such a good actor, and everybody knows about how wonderful he is. And again, the drug
hang on,
when he specifically was charged, and part of this is because he drugged people. And that was super frustrating to me, that you would write those letters knowing that is what he did. That's pretty perverse, if you ask me.
I agree completely. It was obviously a strategic attempt on it was probably written for them even in many ways, right? I mean, it's probably paralegals and lawyers who wrote these things. And there were certain beats that they were trying to hit that you see letter after letter after letter, right? The anti-drug stuff, the homework with the kids stuff, the anecdotal, he's such a good man, he's such a role model. And you're kind of like, and even beyond Ashton and Mila's letters, all of them have this flavor to them. And so you kind of get, okay, I get it. It's even a little boilerplate in some ways. But again, the common sense of the people who put their initials on these letters, right? Like, why would you do that? This is a convicted serial rapist who drugged women. This is not somebody who you now say to a judge, oh, he's a role model for me and my kids, and I never saw
nice to me.
Drugs. Yeah. What are you talking about? Right? It would be like, would you do that for Bill Cosby? What are you thinking? Right? And that's where the common sense just kind of goes out the window on this, even though all the things I've said about it being a standard practice, lawyers always push for it, judges expect it. It's not like the judge was sitting there morally outraged about this. This is a they get this in every case, right? So this is no big deal for them. But for the public, they tend to not know about these things. And so you release information about these kind of details of how the law works and how cases go. And sometimes people just lose their minds because they can't imagine, how could this be normal? Right? And it's pretty much not from if you take it out of that whole legal world, it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts that you would do this. And that's why they're getting dragged. And again, I can't have while I'll offer these sort of explanations, I hope that's not coming across like I'm trying to make it okay, because it's really not.
No, we're not getting that impression at all. So don't worry about that.
It just feels like posturing from them, especially considering that Ashton has this advocacy group called Thorn, and you would put your reputation for everything that you've done for however so many years that you've supposedly done, all for this, because that's what it looks like to me. It just looks like, again, performative, like you are doing this to distract from like how you really feel and how you really treat victims, in my opinion.
I agree completely. I want to ask you guys, did you see the video that they did?
Did I see it?
Oh,
I've seen it about 500 times already.
Okay, so then I
watched Mila go, like, purse her lips and kind of look over like she's like not happy about the situation.
And just the way that they sat there, you could tell how scripted it was, because it's like a show like this, we're talking, and sometimes we might try to jump in and say something, but the other person's still talking. And so, because we're not on a script here, but with them, Ashton had his lines, Mila had hers, and they said it in order like they would on a show, like they had practiced it very well. And then on top of that, how they looked on the camera, the way they dressed, to make themselves look sad and pathetic in a way.
Gray.
And gray. And just all the body language and everything that went into that was just like, this is an act. This is a performance that they're doing. Yeah, because they're made to do this at this point. They have no choice but to do this, to try to save their organization from being hypocritical, which it's already too late in my books for that, but other people will see it other ways. So
no, that's absolutely right. It's a rough thing, because you need and want major amounts of money and major organizations and major players, and Mila and Ashton are major players. These are not minor celebrities. These people have a lot of money and a lot of influence. These are not has-beens or D-list actors. Mila and Ashton are top flight social media influencers, investors, and business people. And they also happen to have been on TV. That's who they are. Danny Masterson is a D-list. Like, that guy was in Dracula 2000. I mean, you know what I mean? Who cares, right? He was on the 70s show. He ain't on that anymore, and he's never going to be. Nobody cares about Danny Masterson. Mila and Ashton and some of the other people who wrote some of those letters are working professionals, and these are people who represent major interests. And I have to comment on the fact that it's such a damn shame, because there's so much money and there's so much potential good there to be done through this charitable organization they set up for victims, and then they blow it all in a moment of complete stupidity.
Yep.
Because they think this guy is their friend and he's a sociopath and he's a serial abuser, and that's not somebody you call friend, and it certainly isn't somebody you write as a role model. I'm floored by that entire thing, and I had to say on the video, I thought that it looked to me like they went to bed, I guess, on Saturday. I think it came out on Sunday or something, right? So they go to bed and nothing's happening, and they get woken up by their PR team at like 5 a.m. Like, holy shit, you're not gonna believe! Like, here's the script. Get a camera, read it now. Like, we got to get this out.
Get on camera. Get on camera.
Like, they look like they're just like they just got out of bed. To me, it looks like a POW video. You know, Tony. Video, right? And I was like,
you're sorry.
I thought that was a little bit much, right? And then I watched the video and I was like, oh no, this looks exactly like a POW video. In other words, the video of somebody who's been brainwashed into saying these things, right? Yeah. That's what it looked like. And it was, and that's why people are registering it as insincere, and they just, you know, they're just saying the words. They are. I really wonder, you know, there's a Taryn McCandless. There's another actress.
Yes,
right?
I saw that. Oh, that was terrible. Going off
the deep end. She's
really bad, right?
Really bad.
Here's what I will give her is she's at least honest about where she's coming from.
Just gonna say.
It looks like she's actually in a really bad way, and somebody should check in on her. Is what I really think.
I do agree. Yeah,
but I don't think Mila and Ashton meant a word of that. And I have to wonder, do they think that Masterson was just railroaded and it was all bullshit? Or is it something worse? I don't know. But clearly, no matter what they've said, or no matter how they've put this out, or how many times Mila has apologized or tried to explain herself on Twitter, they don't think they're not coming at this as though the guy they've known for 20 years or whatever is a serial rapist that they need to get out of their life. That's not their attitude about this. And that's, I think, where the basic outrage on the whole thing comes from is, how could you possibly still think this guy's okay after all of this testimony? Horrifying testimony. I've read every word of it. I watched the whole trial happen day by day, and it was horrifying. So that's the why there's all this moral outrage over this. And that's why the people like Taryn who are going to stand up and support Danny, hey, fine, think whatever you want, but you're crazy. And Ashton and Mila is, well, you're insincere as hell. I really don't know where the hell your head's at. I don't want to have anything to do with you at this point, because the moral outrage is correct, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And
absolutely.
We're going to start winding down the show here, because we're coming up to an hour here pretty soon. Yeah. So I want to mention one last thing too for our viewers is, if you haven't, go on to Leah Remini's Substack. I got the link for it in the description of the video, and please read the victim impact statements that she posted up there as well. So you get to see the sides of the victims and what they say. Go onto Tony Ortega's website, read the letters that Ashton and Mila wrote as well, and
all the others. He's posted all of them at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Good.
It's good.
I've only read Ashton and Mila's one, but you know, read these impact statements, read these other letters, and I tell viewers, you know, form your own opinion about it. I'm not here to tell you what to think. So that's what I want people to do, and just see how messed up this situation really is. And, you know, there are so many easy ways that this could have been prevented. And yet the church takes these extreme ways to cover it up. And it's just gross and disgusting. And that's what we're here on this show to point out and reveal to everybody, is that these tactics are being used, not just by Jehovah's Witnesses, not just by Scientologists, but they're being used by organizations all over the world. And to recognize the signs and the tactics that they use, so when you see it for yourself, you recognize it enough to say, hey, this isn't right. I need to say something and report it. and hopefully you have the courage and ability to stand up and say something about it.
Absolutely. It's all about raising awareness. And if anybody in the comments has a question, please make sure you get it in before we close out. But I wanted to also ask you, Chris, is there any projects you have coming up? Obviously, we can find you on your socials. We've got them in the description. But is there anything you've got other than you've got this awesome book here in front of us that I'll have to take a look at? But is there anything else you wanted to promote while you were here?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking.
Sure.
There's a lot to know about Scientology, just like there's a lot to know about JWs or Mormons or any of these cults. And if you're really interested in the whole story on it, then, this is your book. As far as, you can get this on Amazon. I wrote this and published this years ago, and it's audio, ebook, as well as you can get it hard copy. In addition to that, I have a YouTube channel. I've just today started a TikTok account. And
you did? I'll have to follow you.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on there as same thing, Chris Shelton MSc. I have the MSc is for my degree in the psychology of coercive control. I am an expert in that topic, not just about Scientology. And so I've tried to bring this education to cult awareness, cult recovery. I provide I provide consultation services. I am not a therapist, but my degree does give me a lot of knowledge and information in how to advise, educate, and guide people who have come out of coercive situations. I've helped family and friends of people who have, family in the cult, or they don't know what to do to talk to them or how to deal with that. I've helped people with that. So if you need that kind of assistance, I'm available for that. You can contact me through my website or through askchrisshelton@gmail.com. And all of the links to all my stuff is in the description of every video I've published. There's over 1,000 videos on my channel, almost all of them evergreen, still good today as they were when I posted them however long ago, all the way up to now, about all of this stuff: cults, coercive control, and recovery. So I really encourage people to come and dive deep into my channel and check it out, because there's a lot of resources there for people, no matter what group you came out of. As we've said so many times today, it's all the same playbook. And so the same recovery techniques work. And this also goes outside of cults, religious cults. We're talking about MLMs and, large group awareness trainings, all of that stuff. It's all coercive control. So,
and I will say,
spirituality.
Yeah.
I've been watching your channel for years now, Chris, and so I've been following you for a while. So yes, a lot of good content on there. And I stole all his links from his YouTube to put them in our description here, so I didn't have to ask you for it all. So
awesome. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And
we appreciate you coming on. This was the big story. I'm glad to have you on. Glad to meet you too as well. So a lot of great information. And I know we could go on for hours and hours about this. So I did want to bring up one last thing before we go, and it's just a bit of Jehovah's Witness news real quick. This is just and this is not confirmed yet, so I don't want to put it out there as confirmed, but it's a Reddit post I saw. Ryan, you'll probably know who this is. Warwick Pimo, the Warwick Pimo channel on YouTube, a guy who is in Bethel and releases and leaks things out, has been kicked out and been found out. So
I saw a tweet about that.
Yes.
Is this a famous person? Who is this individual?
We don't know who he is, because when you're inside their headquarters, it's a pseudonym, so that way he can keep his anonymity. But he has been found out. I'll show you the post real quick that I found here, and this is on Reddit. Can you see that? Okay, bring that up.
It's not bad.
Is that better? Okay. So this is an email that he sent out, and like I said, he's been outed. So if you go to email him. It looks like he sent it to JT and Lady C as well. So that's why I think it's legitimate. And so there's an email he says you can reach him at. If anybody knows who this is and can confirm that he really was outed and kicked out, please go give him a hand if you can, because this guy did a lot of good work already. And I hope he continues to do so as he makes his final exit.
Okay. Okay. Hey, there's a little tiny point. I don't know if you guys know about this. Maybe not tiny. I don't know. Just something I'm throwing out there for people because somebody alerted me to it. October 4th, there's going to be a nationwide cell phone test of some kind. And so every cell phone in America, I guess, is going to go off at one time or something with this alert. And if you have a secret cell phone that you've been using as a cult member or somebody in a coercive situation, domestic as well, be aware. October 4th could be the day you want to turn that phone off.
Oh, wow. I didn't hear about that.
And also
Thank you.
Be aware that when it comes on, it likely will do the alert. So if you when you turn it on, please make sure you're somewhere that if it goes off, you'll be okay. Yeah, I'm glad. I have it written in my notes to tell people about. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, somebody emailed me about it, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." So I've mentioned it a few times on my show, but just thought of it. So I thought, well, since we're talking about stuff,
thank you. I hadn't even heard of that,
helpful.
so that's awesome.
Yeah, you can look it up on the FCC website or something, I think, or FCC, one of those official government.
FCC would be the communications one.
Yeah.
Federal Communication something.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Cult. Federal
Communication
cult, probably. It's a possibility. I mean, you know.
Well,
thank you again, Chris. This was awesome. It was so good to meet you.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys too. This was fun. I'm happy to talk anytime.
So yes, thank you for all our viewers. Thank you for joining us as well. A lot of comments going on. I know we didn't put a lot of them up on the screen today because I just wanted to stay engaged in the conversation. So, but I was reading them. We do thank you for all your comments and for being here. Please join us next week. We'll be back at our usual time at 8 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Chris just doesn't like getting up at 6 a.m. and his time to come on. So, this guy here, I mean, no.
Me either, Chris, me either.
As they say, you wouldn't like me if I'm angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm tired.
Right.
Or me hungry. So I get it.
Doesn't work out. So.
Or a combination of any of the above.
Exactly. Okay.
So, but anyways, thank you all. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you all next week. And as always, apostate your way. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Chris.